Hello. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Christianity as a backdrop in video games. This is the first part of this series. I don't like Christian art because it is often designed to evangelize first and be good art second. Passion of the Christ was a bad movie even at my most religious. That said, I love seeing different depictions of religion within art. Yes, I am a huge fan of Andrei Tarkovsky. Why'd you ask? Denis Villeneuve made Prisoners, and while I hope to never watch that film ever again, its depiction of American Christianity and faith is one of the most striking examples I've ever seen. The Coen brothers have a lot of underlying religion in their films, even if it is a bit more backhanded or cynical. So many Christians love "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" John Darnielle of the band The Mountain Goats is a Christian, and he made Tallahassee, which is maybe the best folk album of the 2000s. Shoo Shoo's album Unclouded Sky is an album of field recordings and hymns. Jamie Stewart had this to say about it. I have an entwined relationship with North American religious folk music. My father and uncle were both part of the folk revival movement of the early 1960s. Because I had a good experience with religion in its loosest forms, it is something that has continued to be part of my life, although a very private one, aside from these notes, I suppose. Consider those extra credit materials if you're interested. Christianity is everywhere for us Americans. If you have any cash on you right now, congrats. In God we trust. The majority of Americans are in some way Christian, so it makes sense that a lot of our art would in some way be about reconciling religion with the current political landscape it exists in. Part of being a citizen of any large nation is grappling with loving your nation despite hating its actions. Is a nation its government or its people? I love the people of America. Seeing students protesting injustice they see is an encouraging sight. It's good to know that the kids are all right. Americana makes me temporarily proud to be an American, and that lasts as long as I go without seeing our involvement in human rights violations, or I remember the CIA exists. It only makes sense that America would carry a lot of the baggage of religion within it. Americana is something I've always had a fascination with. Maybe it's because it's the closest thing to culture I, as an American, can have. Books like The Grapes of Wrath, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Gilead, these novels carry religion throughout them without feeling like something made to evangelize to the reader. While Americana is common in novels and films, there aren't many Americana games out there. Leave recommendations in the comments if you know of any. And no, I don't count Fallout as Americana. But in 2013, that changed. In March of 2013, BioShock Infinite released. It didn't say anything important about the topic, but 2 months prior to that, in January 7th, Act 1 of Kentucky Route Zero already had. Kentucky Route Zero is like a sacred relic to me. It is full of reverence. It asks you to just sit there and listen to hymns, letting you ignore it, but it's there should you choose. You can listen to someone play the organ for a long time, twice. And this is weird, but the first interaction you have with the Xanadu, it felt like a holy moment to me. I don't know what that says about me, or this game. The game will often lean into absurdity. It's strange and surreal a lot of the time, but those feelings don't counteract the sense of reverence it has. I think they do more to strengthen that feeling. That there are things that are beautiful, sad, worthy of respect. It really is a cure for the modern age of quippy superheroes who fight villains who make a few great points about systemic problems, but also for some odd reason believe that murdering babies is the way to correct that. Wow, I guess I'm a hypocrite. I'm quipping in the middle of my talk about reverence. Humor is a coping mechanism. I wonder if that's why all the kids make 9/11 jokes. I wonder if it has anything to do with classes being paused to show second graders what it looks like when a man jumps to his death instead of burning alive. I first played this game over the course of 2 years, from December 27th, 2021 until June 2nd, 2023. This is a work of art that asks you on multiple occasions, collaborate with me on this. What poem do you want to color this moment? What were the lyrics to this song? What ambient background noises go with this theremin? People will throw around the word pretentious a lot when talking about any piece of art that takes itself seriously. I strongly disagree with anyone who claims it about this game. Those people are just allergic to the idea of being unironic for a single second. I love the characters in this game. I care so deeply for them. I feel like I've known them my whole life, and perhaps it's because I have known them my whole life. I feel like I've given them a piece of my soul as I respond as them in this game. I have felt more for these unvoiced characters than I have for any character ever played by Tom Hanks or Daniel Day-Lewis. Upon replaying the game for this script, I was a bit worried that I had misremembered how much religion was in this game. I remembered the folk hymns, but I wanted something more concrete. But that's the point. It's not explicit Christianity, it's a cultural Christianity. It's that undertone that colors everything. It's the bartender remembering his wife and saying, "Good Christian woman," and then what it means when he later says, "God damn it." It's hymns being sung by people about the chance of a better life. It's the cathedrals that have been repurposed into office buildings. It's the organ music. It's the hope for better days and a life after this one, and that can go two ways. One option boils down to ultimately that resignation that it's just the way things go, kid, and waiting for the next life to be better. But the alternative can lead one to march and protest for the things you love, in full view of God, the company, and everyone. That can lead you to pursue better things. You are given a chance to overhear a homily about St. Joseph the Worker's feast day. This feast day takes place on May 1st, which is also International Workers' Day, also known as Labor Day, a celebration and acknowledgement of workers. St. Joseph the Worker's feast day was ordained to be May 1st, 70 years after the Haymarket Affair, where 4 people were killed by police during a protest for the 8-hour workday. Quote, "Beyond the church, this day is celebrated in remembrance of a violent protest in Chicago, and to honor the 4 martyrs who were unjustly persecuted in its wake, having not only pursued their vocation in their daily labor, but also having pursued their avocation, the form of protest, activism, community building, radicalization, scholarship, and finally, martyrdom. Their and our avocation being, as it should be for all of us, as members of the church or otherwise, to secure our fellow workers the right to labor with dignity." So the question becomes, empathy or apathy? Complacency or activism? Faith always has been a source of confusion for me. Some view any form of action that you can take as Macbeth hearing a prophecy and then forcing it to happen and losing it all in the process. Others view waiting on God to be the person who ignores vaccines during a pandemic because God will keep them safe. Personally, I don't believe in inaction. The folk hymns you hear throughout this game may use religion as a hope of escape from the trials of this world, but they are about loss. Questions of if you view the life you have lived to be satisfactory. They are steeped in an awareness of the impermanence of life, and they try to be at peace with that. Quote, I know I shall meet him at the gate when trials are past. I know I shall meet him face to face, in glory at last. Oh, I believe that when we meet, well done, he'll say. I'll trust in the soul-redeeming love. I'm going that way. I recognize the feelings in these songs. I recognize them within my own absurdism, within my sorrow. These extremely familiar feelings. I think that faith is absurd, and I say that lovingly. There is a familiarity for Christian and non-believer in the feeling that, quote, this world is not my home. I find it in my distance between myself and where I grew up. I find it when the Supreme Court strips away more of our rights. I find it in anti-homeless architecture. That feeling is why faith appeals to people. It provides a direction for that desire for home. Kentucky Route Zero's cultural faith is about how we relate to our community. It exists separate from the institutions that abuse religion for power, and thanks to interpretation, you can use the Bible to justify literally anything. History shows us this, as Christian faith was the justification for the Crusades, slavery, and the genocide of Native Americans. But it was also the justification for civil rights, anti-war protests, and mutual aid. I am both my belief and my doubt. I am my own past and my own present. I am not the averaging of the two of them. I am simultaneously both. I will say I hate Christians whenever I see any piece of news, despite it being those Christian values that drive me to that anger. I guess I'm comfortable with the label agnostic. I'm not an atheist. There are things that have happened to me that make me believe in something more. I was raised Christian. I was homeschooled. I went to a house church, and thankfully my family also watched The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, so it almost cancels it all out. I still think weekly going to church provides a sense of rhythm to help rebalance life, and it's great. But I guess I'm not spiritual. I'm religious. Sorry about that. Let me stop talking about myself and get back to the topic at hand. I played this game so recently, but I don't know what to say about this game. It's a topic that's been something I've been thinking of, but every time I sit down to write it, my mind goes blank. Quite a few people have been credited for first saying writing about music is like dancing about architecture. And I think all attempts to talk about art are flawed in that way. We have to try to communicate our emotion into a logically understandable form. I think the reason why I have a hard time talking about this game is that it feels too much like a sacred relic. It gives me the same feelings that I once got sitting in a pew of an Anglican church and following along in the liturgy, and it's hard for me to describe that emotional experience. That of standing, kneeling, singing, call and response. They are rhythms set by someone else for me to go through. It is designed for feasting and fasting, Lent and Advent. You take part in these rhythms. You speak your predetermined lines. I referred to this game in the past as an interactive play, but perhaps I think of it more as Mass. I'm not trying to be heretical here, so sorry if I've offended you. Again, I still have a love for the church in theory. An interactive play or a play in the rounds or any of that, while fitting for this game, I think it misses out on a part of this. Perhaps it's because I've never been one for theater myself. That said, watching a live performance of The Glass Menagerie was one of the best experiences I've had with art. Perhaps the reason why I think of this more like Mass, perhaps other than the addition of hymns, is how willing it is to make you sit in silence. It forces you to be contemplative in a way a play isn't. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen any plays that remind me of slow cinema. Slow cinema is also a form of Mass. If you've never been to Mass, I'll do my best to explain what it's like from memory, but I'm not going to describe it as some theologian. I spent 2.5 years in the Anglican Church and have since drifted away from a lot of it. Mass is different from a regular church service in a few ways. For one, it follows a church calendar where each Sunday has its verses already picked out for the priest to speak on. And when you enter the actual seating area, there is a silence in the building as people follow in. Eventually, the priest will announce the beginning of the procession, and the deacon and some other people will file in. You will bow as they bring a cross from the front of the church. And these are the rhythms every week, except during specific church seasons. It goes through these rhythms: hymn, reading, sermon, confession, forgiveness, greeting one another, and communion. I genuinely recommend visiting a Catholic, Anglican, or Episcopalian church once, just for the experience of it. I don't know how similar Eastern Orthodox churches are. They might also be a good example. The first time you go is strange, as you won't know what you're meant to do, so don't try to guess. Just experience it. I love the rhythms of Mass. I love the quiet stillness found within it. I love the idea of confession followed by forgiveness. I like how Eucharist is such a communal action. For some reason, Kentucky Route Zero feels like this to me. Closer to this than to any play I've seen. But I don't feel like I've gotten any closer to explaining why that matters to me, or I don't know how to explain to you everything I want to say about how religion becomes a background texture, because perhaps I'm too familiar, and that's why I can't recognize it the way maybe someone else could. When someone talks about how a movie is not political, often they just mean that it condones the status quo. So many of those movies are pro-police, pro-military, pro-America in general, and I'm not sure if these expected details are blending in for me, preventing me from saying anything. How is this what I've written about my second favorite game of all time? I feel so vague. I've cut and rewritten and cut so much from this essay. I've removed jokes, and I don't know if it's better for that. I wanted this to be a 20-minute video about 2 games, but I can't make it that. I'm worried I'm failing to communicate anything about this game. Let me start over. Kentucky Route Zero's faith haunts Conway. It takes different forms as it looms over him throughout the story. Conway, who we begin in control of, and his dog Homer are making their last delivery for the antique store he worked at before it closed down. He struggles with guilt. He blames himself for something that he can never forgive himself of. Conway's faith is that of resignation. So, he gives the truck to Shannon and asks her to finish the delivery. When the delivery truck is given to Shannon, she takes it as far as she can, but cannot take it up from the underground Echo River. The delivery is finished. The truck is left behind. It's unlikely it would even start again if anyone tried to. It remains below in the Echo, a landmark for passerby to see, devoid of any context, like everything else found there will eventually be. My first playthrough, I got the doghouse ending, because I was certain we were going to go back, that we were going to save Conway. And when I realized we weren't, that this was just how it ended, that Conway made a choice, and I couldn't change that for him. After that, I knew I needed to play this game again, so I did. For this video, I played this game a second time, and I swear I made the same exact choices at every chance I got, and not even intentionally, just because I picked what felt right. Well, not every turn. This time I returned to Joseph, I met Carrington, and I disagreed with myself on the doghouse ending, and replaying this was a way to make it right. I beat the game a second time on May 27th, 2024. There's a question this game is asking you as you finish the last delivery to a town now in ruins. And my first time, I said no. I need to go back and save him. Second time again, I said no, but for a different reason. I should stay here. This place is as good as any to start new. Why would I head back out there when all I've seen is bar debt and company towns? Maybe this ruin could be salvaged, turned into a home. The town is built on a burial mound. Every place is built on the bones of those before. I don't know. The game doesn't give you any answers. My first playthrough, I waited for Act 5 to really start. And when I first beat the game, I would have told you it doesn't even give you a conclusion. I'd spent 13 hours with these characters, and it ends. I don't know. I've moved so many times. I've had so many jobs. I miss everything old. I miss what I once got out of going to church. I miss jobs I've quit, rooms I've hated living in. No. From what? I'm still here, struggling to write down ideas. When I was a child doing this, I would get an F, but now this is the product. The game reflected me too much. I can't talk about it, only what of me I recognized in it. America is my home, specifically Southern California. I grew up in Orange County. I refuse to call Orange County LA to appease people who think everything south of LA is LA. I'll always say, I lived in Orange County. They'll ask, where's that? I'll say, a bit south of LA, near Disneyland. And they'll say, okay. When I left California, I had hoped to return again. But at the same time, it was always a thing I had trouble finding time for. So when I heard a friend of mine was getting married in Phoenix, Arizona, I decided I would quit my job and make a road trip out of it. There are so many reasons why I quit that job. On June 20th, I drove for 16 hours from Portland, Oregon down to Orange County. I only had to stop for gas 3 times, and with better planning, I probably could have done it in 2. My 2013 Toyota Corolla has served me incredibly well and gets amazing gas mileage. I highly recommend my 2013 Toyota Corolla LE. I don't recommend any other model because I don't like modern cars. I arrived to my hotel room at 11:53 p.m. on June 20th. I was home. I knew it deep within my flesh. I stood on the balcony and I knew this place. I loved this place more than I've felt love for any other place I have lived in the past 3 years. It was horribly overwhelming, and in that moment I wanted to be anywhere else, and I didn't want to ever leave. I wanted to capture that feeling and never let go of it. I saw friends I hadn't seen since I'd left. I saw friends I'd made after I had left, and friends who I hadn't seen since they had left and had somehow now managed to return. Maybe one day I'll manage to join them. I went to Amoeba Music for the 4th time since they had reopened, and yes, I left California June 30th, 2021. I ate at Pizza Shack on Red Hill Avenue with a friend I've had my whole life, and realize that every pizza I've ever eaten throughout my entire life has been judged against this pizza. It still tasted the same as it did in Sunday school. I ate at Noodle Street in Fullerton. I ate at Felix Cafe in the Orange Circle. I had Mexican ice cream at one of the La Michoacanas near my house. I saw my old house. My old house took a video of me. I'm sure I looked weird on their security cameras, so I returned the favor. I visited the Orange County Public Library. I went to the park I'd gone to for my 13th birthday. I hiked the trail I'd walked on my siblings. I drove up and down the 5. I took the 55, the 91, the 22, the 57, the 205. I had an overwhelming sense of worry that I would do this wrong. That I would either not spend enough time with friends or spend too much time with them that I wouldn't get the chance to take it in for myself. I ranted to my phone's camera while driving. 6 days. You have 6 days to see every place that ever meant a single thing to you. Every location, every scent, every taste, every touch. You have 6 days. I recognized all of it, and a part of me thought that was the worst possible thing because that still meant it is home. Despite 1,000 miles and 3 years, it still meant the exact same thing to me. It still meant everything. When I was driving towards Phoenix, it felt like I was a being with 2 sets of arms. My phantom limbs held the wheel while my real hands didn't know how to function. I was driving east, and for the first time in my life, I wished not to. The desert heat let me know I was real. At the wedding, I saw many of my friends from college who had also moved away. It was beautiful. It felt strange to be in a church again, to be praying again, out loud, for my friend, and I meant it. All of it. All of that religion was still there in me when I was with them. I have so many thoughts that I wanted to work out, but for a day, it doesn't matter. It was the happiest day of the past, I don't know, at least 3 years. I like Portland, don't get me wrong. I'll say it's great to anyone who asks, who isn't from here, because I'm sick of people saying, isn't it a terrible crime hole? And if I say it's great first, normally that stops them from asking these stupid questions. But it's not home. Phoenix isn't home either, but it contained it for a day. California is still home. It kicked me out, or at least I'll keep telling myself that so I don't have to blame myself for leaving. I get why they all leave at the end of Kentucky Route Zero after a storm wipes out their homes. I get why they all stay at the end of Kentucky Route Zero when their world isn't made for living in. I get why Conway decides to lose himself with debt. I get why Emily stays after her studio is gone. I get why they buried the horses. I get why Weaver brought them all here. I forgive myself for leaving.
This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. My treasures and my hopes are placed beyond the blue. Many friends and kin have gone on before, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
In Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, within the zone there are no direct paths. Turning left or right changes the road ahead and the road behind. While Stalker is about an unexplainable place that breaks the dullness of life outside of it, Kentucky Route Zero's dull bureaucracy exists even within the ever-changing cyclical zero. Yes, I love Tarkovsky, and I will mention him any chance I get. The Zero and the underwater Echo River are filled with both illogical oddities as well as call centers and storage facilities. Cultural faith is something that exists to create that separation from the hopelessness found even within the unexplainable. Your destination of 5 Dogwood Drive gives you a hope that there is a possibility of escape that can be found within community. Faith that can serve as a unifying force for these people. Kentucky Route Zero isn't about the importance of church or structured religion. The game is about faith. A faith that is a heritage to reach into and thank the people who helped us get this far. It understands that America is built on the bones of the oppressed. Company towns and forced labor from people viewed as subhuman. It is those people who can turn around and make something beautiful from their suffering. That suffering that becomes American culture. Kentucky Route Zero's bureaucratic absurdism feels fitting to our world. The Grapes of Wrath depicts suffering and struggling to survive. That depiction is hailed as a classic, yet the sources of that suffering are still viewed as necessary, evil, or even good. When no one reacts to an office building with a floor labeled bears, while a funny moment of absurdism also highlights how absurd moments of our own life can just be normalized. Maybe I'm reading too much into the bears. I don't care. The storage facility scene is the greatest example of how this game portrays Christianity. The local church got kicked out of their cathedral when the Bureau of Reclaimed Spaces moved in. The church and congregation were relocated to a storage facility. Everyone stopped going. However, the janitor of the storage facility has a collection of the priest's sermons on tape and plays them at their designated times. When asked if his whole family is Catholic, he responds, "Oh no, we're not religious. I just watched and listened while the congregation did all this stuff, and I probably don't understand as much of it as you might think. Anyway, I know how to run the overhead projector and the tape player. At least I know how to keep it going, right?" It isn't about faith. It's about some form of heritage. I run the slideshow. I play the tapes. I don't get paid for it. I take it pretty seriously, but no one's telling me I should. Is it a hobby? Seems like there ought to be a more serious word for it. Because he isn't Catholic, he respectfully does not take part in the rituals after the sermon. Also because he can't remember them. This is the cultural Christianity of Kentucky Route Zero. It continues on like a ghost for no one's sake, a thing devoid of context, just like the oddities floating down the Echo River.